Okay, today I will be predicting the Kansas City Chiefs record for 2024 to 2025. So looking at their roster, obviously their offense is Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce. I think their offense is good, especially with them signing Marquise Brown and then drafting Xavier Worthy. As long as Rashee Rice does not get suspended, I expect the offense to continue to being good. Well, their defense, they were great last year, but this year I do have some more concerns. I still think they're over reliant on Chris Jones for the pass rush. And they lost L'Jarius Sneed and didn't really replace him with anybody. So I don't expect the Kansas City Chiefs defense to be as good as last year, but I expect their offense to be much better. So starting off, we have our first opening game. You have the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Baltimore Ravens. Chiefs do have home field advantage. This is going to be a rematch of the AFC Championship. Ravens, I think they lost a lot of pieces on defense. It's going to be a close game, obviously, regardless of what happens. But I expect the Kansas City Chiefs to pull through. I think they just have a more well gelled team together while the Ravens are getting some new pieces on defense. And if you week two, a game versus another very tough game versus the Bengals. Interesting team. They lost Tyler Boyd and they did get some new pieces on defense, but other than that, they didn't really change all that much. But Joe Burrow always has his first 4 weeks of the season, Joe Burrow does not play very well. So I think the Kansas City Chiefs defense can take advantage of that. And I don't expect the Bengals defense to be especially strong this year. And I think the Mahomes can do okay versus that Bengals defense. So I'm going to take the Chiefs. And they also have a mini bye between the week one and week two. Then you have week three versus the Falcons. Definitely a trap game for the Chiefs. The Falcons, they brought in Kirk Cousins. They have a very talented team all around. Their defense wasn't great last year, but they still have a lot of talent, like guys like AJ Terrell and Jesse Bates. So definitely a trap game for the Kansas City Chiefs. But I don't see the Chiefs falling into that trap. I feel like the Falcons, they have a very inexperienced coach, and I think Andy Reid will be able to out scheme him. So I'm going to take the Chiefs again for a Week 3 win. And then similar story in week four, you got the Chargers. They definitely have some talent. They try to bring in new pieces on their offensive line. Justin Herbert is a very good quarterback. But to me, similar to the Falcons, they have a very John Har Jim Harbaugh is a new coach. He's gonna have time implementing his scheme. The Chargers have like two or three new starters on the offensive line. I think Chris Jones can wreak havoc for Justin Herbert. And the Chargers defense just isn't that talented, so I'm gonna take the Chiefs here. Then you have week five against the Saints. Saints are just such a mediocre team. Derek Carr can have his good games, can have his bad games, but I don't expect him to have a good game versus the Chiefs. And the Saints are just super old team. They just don't have the firepower to keep up with the Chiefs, especially on prime time. So I'm taking the Chiefs here. So they're 5-0 going into the bye. Okay, then you have your Week 7 versus the Niners, a Super Bowl rematch. Niners, they're still loaded on defense with guys like Fred Warner and Nick Bosa, and their offense still is pretty much the same players as last year. Kansas City Chiefs, I could see the Chiefs winning this game if Chris Jones can um, get pressure on Brock Purdy and make him scramble. But Chiefs offense, I think, might have trouble against that Niners defense, especially when Niners have home field advantage. So I'm going to take the Niners here. Then you have the Week 8 game versus the Raiders. Other than last year, the Chiefs usually do well against divisional opponents. Raiders, I think they have a very good defense. Got the Jeff that could definitely challenge the Chiefs' offense, but the Raiders' offense just isn't anything good. The Raiders' offense of Aiden O'Connell and Devontae Adams just isn't good and will struggle. So I'm going to take the Chiefs here. Then you got Week 9 versus the Bucks, another trap game for the Chiefs. Bucks, personally, I'm not too impressed with their offseason. They did re-sign Baker Mayfield. I like Baker Mayfield. Their offense is fine. They do have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, but I don't trust the Bucks defense at all. I think Xavier Worthy, Marquise Brown, and Rashee Rice, as long as he's not suspended, can go off versus that Bucks defense. So I'm going to take the Chiefs here. Then you have Week 10 versus the Broncos. Broncos stink. They lost a lot of pieces. Chiefs, other than that one game last year, dominate the Broncos. So I'm going to take the Chiefs here. Then you have Week 11 versus the Bills. Um, Bills, for some reason, play the Chiefs well in the regular season. They've won like the past 2 games in the regular season versus the Chiefs. Josh Allen is a freak, and their defense. I think at this point in the season, they will have their defense with all those new pieces will gel. And the Chiefs, I don't think they're as talented as the Bills. Not gonna lie. So I'm gonna take the Bills here. Then you have Week 12 versus the Panthers. Panthers, I think, are improving. Definitely a trap game for the Chiefs, considering the Panthers are coming off a bye. But I don't see the Chiefs losing to the Panthers since they just lost to the Bills in my simulation. So I'm going to take the Chiefs here. Then you have Week 13 versus the Raiders. Raiders did split with the Chiefs last year. This is a Friday night game. Interesting. This is a Black Friday game. The Chiefs, I don't think they're gonna fall into that trap. Raiders do have, like I said, Raiders do have a good defense, but their offense is just not good. So I'm going to hit the Chiefs here. Then you have Week 14 versus the Chargers. Like I said earlier, the Chargers are a relatively new team, but in Week 14, Jim Harbaugh should have that offense rolling. Definitely a trap game for the Chiefs, and I think the Chiefs are going to fall into that trap. Um, their defense, if Chris Jones ever gets injured, I think that defense will fail, and at some point, I think he's going to have a minor injury, and I think Harbaugh will have his scheme fully installed in that Chargers offense. I'm going to take the Chargers here. You have Week 15 versus the Browns. Browns have home field advantage, so Browns are Cleveland is a really hard place to play. Chiefs, I think they do well versus the Browns, whose secondary isn't exactly the best. I feel like they can get some good burners, but I think that as long as Deshaun Watson does average, I just like the Browns offense a lot. Like especially against that Chiefs defense, so I'm going to take the Browns here in the high shootout. Then you have Week 16 versus the Texans. Another interest. I think this is going to be definitely a great game. C.J. Stroud, Stephon Diggs versus Mahomes and Kelsey. But I think the Chiefs, they have much better experience than the Texans, especially on offense. So I'm going to take, and I don't trust the Texans defense just yet. So I got to see the Texans defense first. So I'm going to take the Chiefs here. Then Week 17 versus the Steelers. Um, Definitely another trap game for the Chiefs. Steelers, Pittsburgh's a hard place to play. It's a Wednesday game. Interesting. It's a Christmas Day game, so it's a very short week for the Kansas City Chiefs, and I think that's going to affect them big time, especially late in the season. I see Mahomes struggling against a very stout Steelers defense, so I'm going to take the Steelers here, upsetting the Chiefs. Then Week 18 versus the Broncos. Like I said, the Broncos absolutely stink. The Chiefs will probably need this game for the number 1 seed. I'm going to take the Chiefs here. So in the end, I have the Chiefs going 12-5, 5-1 in division, 7-1 at home, and 5-4 away.